Facebook. Maybe some of you have seen or shared those. Those are seen by 11 million people. But the experience of seeing it in a cinema with your community is what we're after. And that's why David has created this UK, or Demand.Film, Demand.Film UK, where you can request screenings and you can actually, buy out a cinema in the same way that we used to do this with grassroots groups, where we would say, here, have the movie for free. You can take it. The only thing you have to do is advertise or get to your community, and then you have to rent a hall. So this is sort of the other way around. Instead of somebody taking all that expense on of renting a hall and a projector and everything else, you can actually just get sort of crowd-funded by everybody buying a ticket. Then you have a beautiful theater to show the movie in, where it actually sounds and looks good. That's the model. And you can have at the website your own system of donations for your own grassroots groups, right? So if you're, anti-fracking Scotland or whatever you have going on, you can use that as this movie as a way to raise money, because that's the whole point, right? I'm not here making money off this. I'm here trying to make sure that we stop fracking, because what's happening here is you're taking a lot of the frack gas from my backyard in PA, turning it into plastics, and that can't continue to happen. That's a disaster. So we have to establish communication across the ocean to figure out how we're going to fight together. And as you see, this is a tough one. This is really difficult. It leads you down a very, very hard trail, the science does. At the same time, you can't deny the amazing resilience of these folks, and that we have to understand that their struggle is our struggle and vice versa. And also there's the GASLAND films that are available to you if you need those to educate people about the dire issues related to fracking and the contamination of our governments. As you've witnessed also the media, I've had a pretty harsh treatment here from the BBC, which was quite different of a station 5-6 years ago when I was here last with GASLAND. They were much more fair and even, and this time they really seem to be on the side of the oil and gas industry, reading off of oil and gas talking points and hit sheets and so on and so forth, sabotaging interviews with not the questions that are about the subject that we were supposed to be talking about, all sorts of things like that. However, you have the ability to be the media now. You can use this film, you can show it, you can live stream on Facebook, you can post the things that you need to post. You have to create that. And one of the things that's come out of the last 2 days is we had a discussion in Falkirk last night about how do we sort of bring new people into the anti-fracking movement, and we came up with a couple of campaigns. One of them was frack-free whiskey. Because your whiskey is known all over the world. We call it Scotch in the United States. We have our own form of whiskey, which we call whiskey, which is bourbon. But people love that. And in New York, our water was a big deal, right? It's New York water. It's part of our pizza. It's part of our bagel. It's part of our identity. Also, we had Don't Frack My Beer, Bro, which was a big, successful campaign. So frack-free whiskey's taken off, and we have a bunch of students from the, what is the school? International Documentary School?
Documentary Institute at University of Edinburgh.
Right. Volunteered to do some in-the-field reporting about some of the farmers who do the barley, who create the whiskey, and how they're being threatened by fracking. So we have a conversation going on there between new people in the media and the movement, already kicked off just in the last couple of days. So I'm very excited about that, and I offer to advise and help seed some of those pieces on Facebook. Anyway, that's some of the news that's going on. You have a report coming out in the next couple of weeks about what the government thinks fracking is about. So that'll either be something very good to celebrate or something very bad that you have to protest. Hopefully it's something good. But nevertheless, look, we can beat fracking in Scotland. We can beat coal gasification. If we don't start to really seriously take on climate change, we're going to lose everything we love about the world. And in short order, and the future generations won't have much of the world that we live in. At 2 degrees, another thing that I just learned, 780 million climate refugees. Think about all the xenophobia, all the racism, all the hatred that's come from just the refugee crisis now from Syria, which is also part of that, right? But think about that times 100. Think about that times 1,000. How are we going to cope without a strong sense of values? And that's what I'm trying to encourage. So let's take some questions. Whatever you have, I'm happy to answer. Film, climate, fracking, politics, whatever. Music, yes.
Hello. Is it easier if I stand up?
Yes. Always easier if you stand up.
To stand up. Okay. First of all, fantastic film.
Thank you.
Thanks for bringing it up here.
Yeah.
I've got one question though.
Sure.
The first part of the film pretty much depressing, really, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Did you have within your circle where you are people who are campaigning against fracking saying, man, it's a wee bit too depressing, people are just going to curl up in a wee ball and they're just not going to bother anymore, don't put it out, you have to have a more upbeat message. Did you have that
No.
back and forward?
Not really. I mean, look, even if they did, I would say no because I'm a reporter.
Why not? Why?
Well, I mean, I think that the film does that on purpose. Because well, first of all climate change movies do that. They usually take 2 hours to do that. We do it in like a half an hour. Because we want to kind of bust through it to get to the other side, right? A lot of the climate change movies that you see or climate change campaigns that you see are overwhelming with information. My theory was not that people didn't know about climate change, is that they didn't know what they could do about it. And that was so disempowering that you would feel like overwhelmed and you just wanted to quit. I mean, I quit in the middle of the movie. You know, it takes a minute, the camera just fly away. I don't want to see it again. You know? But I think that the movie pulls you right back out of that with a sense of being grounded. Because I think there's a big difference. First of all, I come from the theater, right? So I believe in catharsis. And I believe in the sort of cleansing and the healing power of it and the power of it, period, right? So a lot of scientific information and academic knowledge is not cathartic in the same way that you have an emotional attachment to what I think the people here in this film are, right? So for me, this was about going through the despair, coming out the other side, pushing through it. And I'm sure if people leave after the first half an hour, you know, it would be rough, really rough. And some people who watch it online, you know, may do that. I hope they come back to it, but I guess what I'm advocating is, when you get overwhelmed, you're not actually, and you tune out, it's a different form of climate denial. You know what I mean? That feeling of being completely overwhelmed, like I cannot look at this, I have no way in. You know, that's a kind of denial of your own emotions. To me, the sadness and the grief are worth feeling because there's something on the other side of it. Like, in every huge bout of grief, there's always a tiny little bit of happiness. And in the biggest happiness that you have, there's always a tiny little bit of sadness. I don't know why that is, but I know that's true about humanity. And so I have faith that this is an emotional wheel. And if you inject yourself emotionally into this, you're going to be living in the real world. And you're going to be compelled to do something about it and be awake and alive, rather than be in a state of, like, you know, easy comfort or just checked out because everything's so gloomy. And that's my thesis about it. And hopefully, you know, we look at this, and of course it's despairing, but the ability to get back up again, to dance, you know, that's where we try to dance. You know, if you feel that dance still in your body, that's the movement. It's a whole body thing, not always just something. So that's my thought. Next question. Yes,
question.
sir, in the back.
My question is around, in the documentary you made the claim that Boston, New York, climate weather changes, snow. Okay, so Hurricane Katrina, New Orleans, that's effect of climate change, the destruction of a city. But later in your documentary you talk about Syria and the conflict that's going on there.
Right.
It's a land war, it's a climate war to do with resources. But there is the opposite argument. I mean, that claim, that's a big statement.
What do you mean?
That claim that you're making, that it is a conflict born of
It was a very significant factor.
A fight for resources.
Yeah. No, I was saying,
By
what I was saying is really very specific. What I was saying is, it was that Syria suffered the worst drought in its history, at 5 years of no rain. There was nothing, and what is true about climate, which is so completely confusing, is not that it's just that global warming makes everything hot. It makes the extremes of weather more severe. So you have more severe superstorms, whether they're snowstorms or they are, you're seeing changes in the weather patterns that are more extreme than we've ever seen, right? So some places are going to have really severe drought, whereas other places are going to have really severe flooding. You had some of the worst flooding in history, right? It was last winter, yeah. And when we're talking about supercharging hurricanes, because the climate, hot air holds more water vapor than cold. So when you warm the atmosphere, you're going to supercharge a lot of those storms. And we're seeing some of the worst hurricanes every week now. There's a hurricane that's about to hit the West Coast. which is projected to be one of the biggest storms of all time. So we're hearing biggest storm of all time, biggest storm of all time, because we're hearing that over and over and over again. And so when you talk about Syria, we're talking about how that there was a climate change will induce further stresses on situations that are already bad in a lot of cases. You know, in the Rockaways, you have people living in poverty. That wasn't a climate problem, but the climate storm made that problem worse. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. But I think that's a great question. I think what I'm worried about the most is how climate change will exacerbate conflicts. So, for example, during Katrina, the mayor of New Orleans got on the TV and on the radio and said the whole city, a lot of the city was underwater, especially the poor and the black areas. And he said to his constituents, get out of town, get on this big concrete bridge and walk out of the city, walk to the suburbs. So the poor and mostly black residents of New Orleans walked, only to be met on the other side by the racist shotguns of the suburban white police force, and many of them were shot. Now, that was 2 days after the storm. At that point, that wasn't a climate change problem, right? Storm didn't kill those people. The cops did. Racism did. And so what I'm trying to say is, if our impulse with climate change is we got to get rid of the extra shotgun, the extra rounds of shells, the extra riot squad, instead of saying we got to get rid of the spare bedroom, the extra seat at the table, these things are going to get much, much worse. Because that's our human breakdown. That's our failure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we don't want to lose our major cities. Of course not. I live in New York. I love it. But what is it, as Shakespeare said in Coriolanus, what is the city but the people? You know, we can move the people. The city's just a bunch of buildings. But we have to keep our integrity. We have to keep who we are. We cannot allow ourselves to descend into total violence and chaos. Although it does seem like that is, in many ways, what the world is aiming itself towards. So I think we have to build something stronger than that. Yes, sir. Ma'am.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I don't want to ask a question. I just want to give people an invitation.
Great.
We have the opportunity in Scotland to prevent fracking going ahead, and it is one of the worst climate change culprits.
Yes.
But we can act right now and stop it in its tracks. And we've got, literally in the next few weeks, we've got to act to raise public awareness and get people to say no, so that next year the Scottish Government says no to fracking in Scotland.
Yeah.
And we all have to act on that right now.
Thank you so much. Do we have, do we have campaigners from fracking organizations in the room right now? Can you stand up?
Yeah.
So, and do you accept new members?
Yeah.
All these people. All right, fabulous.
So
These are wonderful people. Go ahead, give yourself a plug and join up with these organizations.
Okay,
Everybody
so-
who's not standing up should join up with some of these folks.
Okay, so Frack Watch Glasgow is the local Glasgow-based organisation that's part of the broad alliance of communities against unconventional gas. So please get on our Facebook page. We've got a sign-up sheet here. You can give us your email. And the reason we want that is because in the next 2 weeks the government is going to publish its report on fracking and other kinds of unconventional gas. And then it's going to open a public consultation, and that will last for, we don't know how long, maybe 3 months, something like that. So we have this window of opportunity to mobilise thousands of Scots to say no. So that's why we want, so we've got your email. When we know what the public consultation is, whether it's an online thing or meetings, and anyway we'll organise our own protests and demonstrations, then we want to be able to contact you all straight away. So when you fill in the form, please write really neatly, because there's nothing more depressing than emailing somebody and it bounces back because they scribbled their email. So
What's the web handle of that? Is there a Twitter for it?
Facebook is Frack Watch Glasgow. You know, there's a very
Is
famous...
there a Twitter handle or a website?
Yeah, there's no website. But there is the Broad Alliance website, which is all the...
Frack Watch
groups.
Glasgow?
Yeah. And the Broad Alliance is broad-alliance.org. Okay. And
Scotland against fracking.
So I just tweeted that out with the picture.
My Twitter handle is Josh Fox Film, so if you want to see that and retweet that, would be.
On the day when the report comes out, whatever it says, we're going to meet. We took a decision last night in Falkirk that on the day the report is published, we're all going to go to the Parliament. So we'll try and make it around the lunchtime, going through to sort of after work, so that people who are from Glasgow, if they're at work, they can get there after work. People in Edinburgh can get there lunchtime. And we can be there. And if it says fracking is rubbish and we're completely against it, then we'll have a big party.
Yeah. You know, also, one of the things that we're doing for each of these screenings as we go across the country is we're creating a Facebook. We can't just email you all your email addresses back to you. But we are going to create a Facebook page for each screening and email you about the page. So you'll be able to be connected with everybody in this room if they join the page. See what I'm saying? So the idea that you could now interact with this community that saw the movie on this night. Because truthfully, doing this can be very isolating and scary, unless you do it as a team. And you're going to meet some of the most amazing people you've ever met in your life working on this issue, because you're there trying to campaign for a better future. Let's have another, let's take 2 more questions then. Well, tell them. Explain it to them.
It's a multinational company run by Jim Ratcliffe in this country. It's bringing in the dirt from America. We don't want it here. The petrochemical has polluted the area around Grangemouth and Falkirk, caused umpteen health problems. Not the kind of company we want associated with Scotland.
Yeah, thank you. You're right. Absolutely. Same thing in New York, right? We banned fracking in the state of New York, which they said they were never going to do, right? But we did it. But we're still using the gas from other states. So we've been trying to make sure that they complete that ban by saying, you know what? We're not going to build these power plants. We're not going to use this anymore. We're going to phase it out.
We can't have that anymore.
You know that we have to have a plan to get rid of fossil fuels. The countries that are in the lead are, Scotland is definitely up there, and so is Costa Rica, and so is Germany. The country that built and created the BMW, the Mercedes-Benz, the Porsche, is phasing out the internal combustion engine by 2030. That's astounding. No more gas cars in Germany. It's the electric automobile. Yeah. All right. Yes, ma'am.
It's actually.
Sir. Yes, sir. Stand correct.
So I work in a lot of really radical grassroots human rights organisations or collectives such as the Unity Centre, as some people may have heard of. And I have a question around intersection in human rights activism and climate change activism.
Yeah.
I was brought up by this woman here who is a long-term climate change activist. I was until I was 7, brought up in climate change camps such as Glasgow Peace Campaign, other things like that. So for me, it's been quite a transition between climate change activism and human rights activism. One thing I've noticed in climate change activism, human rights activism spaces, is that a lot of us are very concerned about putting ourselves in the spaces where climate change activism is happening, because a lot of them can be very classist and homophobic and racist.
Yeah.
And because most of us human rights activists, I'm transgender and queer, and I'm disabled, so there's a lot of that. I think that's the barrier. So, it's a massive being in both spaces. It's very apparent. It's not intentional. As someone who is a white male, what would you do to counter that, to make spaces feel safer and more accessible for people who want to join but are maybe quite put off by the connotations that come with quite a lot of climate change?
Yeah, no, I hear you, and I think unfortunately the environmental movement has been characterized as too white and too rich, I don't find that to be the truth. If you look in this film, there's really two white people. It's me and Tim DeChristopher, and that's one of the ways, right? To make sure that we have extraordinary focus on the leadership that is coming from the communities of color. But I'll tell you what I'm doing in practical terms. So my life as a fracking campaigner for several years has been about being in rural communities which are quite majority white, and in many cases, quite conservative, not even really progressives or Democrats. These people are like, we call them green tea, you know, tea partiers, who have, they think about this as a personal property rights issue. So there's been a lot of really interesting bridges born of the crisis of fracking. But what we've been doing with this film in specific is we've created what's called the Climate Revolution rallies in America. And they're born out of our amazing experience, a lot of us, on the Bernie Sanders campaign. The Bernie Sanders campaign broke down a lot of the silos that exist within the movement, right? Here's the fracking campaign, here's the climate campaigners, here's the fight for 15, here's native rights, here's Black Lives Matter, here's, Idle No More, here's the Dreamers of the Dream Act, here are people talking about social and economic inequality, and here's single-payer health care, and Bernie came out, and he was like, I've been doing this for my whole life, and he became the most popular politician in the United States of America. He did not win that little country club beauty contest called the Democratic primary nomination, as we suspected they were going to pick one of their own. In the establishment, but he did become the most popular political figure in the United States. So that was something huge. So what we've done is we've created this thing called the Climate Revolution Rally. There's one in Los Angeles on the 23rd, just next week, actually a week from yesterday. And there's one in Las Vegas 3 days after that. Then we do one in Des Moines, and then we do one in Standing Rock. We did one in Philadelphia the night before the Democratic National Committee. 5,000 people showed up. And the point of those rallies is intersectionality. It's about, it's called the Climate Revolution. It's up to us. There's a rally that starts it off. So in this case, in the one in Philly, I'll just point out, started with Amy Goodman. We had Danny Glover. We had Nako Bear. We had Kendrick Sampson. We have people from Black Lives Matter who are coming and giving their speeches in the climate space. Reverend Yearwood from the Hip Hop Caucus did the one in the Rockaways. We have Aria Doe, who you see in the film. So what we're making sure that we do is when we do that campaign, and this is something that no one has done to this point, which is unfortunate. I mean, not to this degree. They've had people of color talk about climate change, but they haven't talked about having a climate rally where people talk about Black Lives Matter, because they're related, right? It was Eric Garner's daughter, Erica Garner. Eric Garner, who was the person who was killed by the police in New York City, who said, "I can't breathe," who started a lot of that was such a horrifying episode. And we correspond on Twitter all the time. And, it was pointed out that Eric Gardner died because he was choked by the police. But he also had a very, very small chance of surviving that because he had asthma. Why did he have asthma? Because he lived in the black community. Why did that matter? Because environmental degradation and pollution in the black community, because of incinerators and coal-fired power plants, is much, much worse. Yeah, it's environmental racism. So pointing this out and making sure that when we bring all those folks who are coming to see Shailene Woodley and Susan Sarandon, those people on our stage, that they are also getting a healthy dose of reality of the leadership that has to happen. And what's amazing about this moment in America right now is it truly is this political revolution time, and the fight, for transgender equality is on our stage also. We always have, we have to build an inclusive stage in the climate platform, because communities that are more politically vulnerable are also more vulnerable to climate change. So when we talk about values, you see that human rights is the air that we breathe. That's there intentionally, because these companies are creating human rights abuses, especially the frackers, and that disproportionately affects, communities that are currently outside the power structure. But what's so weird about this whole moment is that we're all outside the power structure. When the British government overturns model citizen behavior, it's hard. We have someone here from Frack-Free Lancashire right here who drove all this mic. It's called tyranny. And governments are becoming less and less and less legitimate in the eyes of the people, the more they simply do the bidding of the rich and powerful and ignore the rest of them. So, unfortunately, we have a great deal of common ground right now in America, because almost everybody's broke. But at the same time, you have a real need, I think, definitely not just address these ideas of diversity and identity, but to make sure that there's space there on the stage and in your film, and all the other things that we do to talk about these things. So I really appreciate the question. It's something we don't just feel passionately about, or I don't, and my team doesn't just feel passionately about. We're actively pursuing making sure that that's an issue. And if you go on Twitter or any of these live stream climate revolution pages, you can watch some of these incredible speeches down in Philly from Black Lives Matter, or in the Rockaways on the climate revolution stage. And they're often going to be the ones to make those connections. But I think that we have to be very, very conscientious about this, because let's face it. I mean, Hurricane Matthew just came and hit Haiti. The Haitians have very, very little to do, in fact, nothing to do with climate change. They don't burn a lot of fossil fuels. They don't have a lot of these industrial processes. They're not responsible. There's a couple of countries, I think one of them that did something weird called the Industrial Revolution, like way back a couple hundred years ago, that have a responsibility. So Theresa May should not be overturning Lancashire. Theresa May should be sending a shit ton of pounds sterling down to Haiti, saying, sorry, 300 years ago, we fucked up the atmosphere. That's what should be done. And that's a direct quote. Any last question? One last question, or are we done? We good? Okay, yes, ma'am. All right, why don't we do this? We'll ask 1, 2, and I'll answer them both. You go first and you go second.
Last night we were talking about the media and how biased the BBC were,
Yeah.
and it just came out today that RT, and I saw you were interviewed and going underground on Wednesday,
Right.
had their bank accounts, UK bank accounts closed with no right of appeal.
RT had their bank accounts closed.
No right of appeal.
I was on their program on Saturday, right? So, okay, wow, that's interesting. Go ahead. What's the next question?
So maybe it's not a question, but it's just a comment.
Okay.
So I am a dancer,
Oh, good.
and I'm not an activist,
Uh-huh.
and it's really refreshing for me to see in the film so much dance, and
So important.
it's so important. And the conclusion after the film for me
You have a dancing partner now, calling up your leg.
was that really I should continue dancing.
Yes, you should.
And it's so important to stay connected to the body. And it was even so difficult even for me, being used to performing, to get up from the chair and join you at the end.
Right.
I felt so uncomfortable.
Yeah, me
So-
too.
and
Every
so,
time.
it's kind of interesting, to see all those cultures, how they connect through the dance, and they are bare feet and dancing and gathering, and they are connecting through the body. And for us, we have so many figures, and I know the least from all the facts that you guys know here, but I think it's so important to connect through the body, and so yeah, that was really nice for me to see so much music and so much dance, and I wish there was more artists here, that also they have power to communicate, but and go together with activists and with scientists, and it has to come together,
I think it has to be a cultural thing.
Yes, it has
So
to.
that's why we're doing these climate revolution rallies, because they have the rally, and then we have a concert,
Yeah.
and then we have the screening, and then we have a dance party. So these things can go on for 8 hours. But we're creating a space for people to be, and they don't leave. They show up, they want to see Naco Bear, or they want to see Kid Malone from TV on the radio, or whatever. You know what I mean? They come see the movie, and then that movie is blasting by the end of it. And people just get up and dance, and then we come in with the next song, and we have a big dance party. So we're actually playing a dance festival in Amsterdam this weekend, which I'm excited about. It's
Great.
the ADE Festival, it's called? ADE Festival in Amsterdam, dance festival. And my next project is all about how I'm shaving my head, go vegan, and become a modern dancer, all over again. Because I've done that in the past, but it's time to do it again. But honestly, though, I think you're on the right track with climate activism if you've left your house, and that means you've got your whole body, you've got yourself engaged. You're not doing this. This is not activism. This is a trance. You have to get out there with people and be in the streets and walk, and that's part of the first steps, right? And this one is not walking yet, but crawl, you can crawl. But the idea that you have to have your body because your body is invested, right? Our climate crisis is reflected in our bodies a lot of the time, I mean, you see a lot of people, especially in America, who are very much overweight because they're eating a lot of meat, they're eating a lot of really processed foods. These are really bad for the climate, they're also really bad for people, and it's in their body. So how do you start to also do this with the whole part of you, because I think that's another reason why, ma'am, you asked a question about depression. That in the first half of the movie, it's all in your head. You realize that, right? It's all talking heads for the first half, except the Hurricane Sandy part. That whole overwhelmed section is overwhelmed because it's the heads, the talking heads, the brains, the Bill McKibben, the Van Jones, the Elizabeth Colbert, the Lester Brown. It's all here. The whole rest of the movie is on its feet. There's not a single other time really where we sit down throughout the whole rest of the movie. We have a couple little snippets, but the rest of the movie is on its feet, in a boat, trekking through the Amazon, on the side of a volcano, running from the police. You know, this is the, and so you see there's a big difference. It's almost like two movies, right? So I do think the first thing a dictatorial repressive regime does is jail the press corps. Throw all the reporters, put them in jail. Limit press freedom. Hitler did that. Pinochet did that. You know, we are in a situation right now with this film. I don't know if you know about this, but the producer of this movie, Dave Schlossberg, was filming a climate change activist protest where there are all these pipelines. You've heard of the Dakota Access Pipeline that the Standing Rock Sioux are protesting, and many of us are. But there are other pipelines coming from Canada that are bringing tar sands oil into the United States. They have emergency shut-off valves on those pipelines. A group of activists went to 5 different pipelines in 3 different states and said, you know what, this is an emergency, a climate emergency. They clipped the locks and they turned the pipelines off. And then they waited to get arrested. Now in the United States, that'll put you down maybe 3, 4, 5 years in jail. Big sacrifice to do that. My producer, Dea Schlossberg, who was also camera on this in many places, was there to film the protest. Protected, constitutionally protected. Right, freedom of the press. I am there to shoot this protest. They picked her up, they threw her in jail. As an accessory, charged her with 3 counts of criminal conspiracy, and those counts could add up to 45 years in jail. Edward Snowden tweeted out about this 2 days ago and said, this producer is facing 45 years, just want you to know that I'm only facing 30. And there have been hundreds of newspaper articles about this. Amy Goodman was also arrested. You should know, earlier today, Amy Goodman, her charges were dropped, nullified. So that's a big deal. Why? Because we put pressure on them. Because we put pressure on them. We also had Shailene Woodley, a really good friend of mine from the Bernie campaigns, also was arrested for live streaming on Facebook. Why was she arrested? Because she was a member of the media all of a sudden. Now, this is very fucking serious. How is it that you, and RT, okay, I didn't go on RT for a long time, because RT is Putin, and we all know that this is a state-controlled media outlet that is operating in the West, and its motives are suspicious. However, guess what CNN is? You know, pick your poison. Wouldn't put me on. CNN would not put me on for this movie, neither would MSDNC. We call it CNN Clinton News Network. MSDNC, MSNBC. We had a hard time getting on any television for this movie, at all. And there was many of my friends who were Bernie surrogates who got blacklisted. And, you know, there's a lot of suspicion that there was that kind of thing happening. We saved the day because we did these Facebook videos that got 11 million views, and the ratings for this movie were up through the roof on HBO. But only because we went to alternative media, and I did every RT show on the channel, because I was like, all right, fuck it, I can't handle it anymore. But you know, truthfully speaking, if Rupert Murdoch owns, that's right. If Rupert Murdoch owns something, what's the difference between Rupert Murdoch owning a media and Putin owning a media and somebody owning a media? The media is being consolidated, the media is being owned. What you have to do is what this man is doing right now, is be the media. You have to be the media. This is public speech. It's perfectly acceptable to record it. Isn't that right? Your live stream?
Yes, it was going to be a live stream, but it's now just a video.
Okay, that's cool. But to be honest, like, that's what we have to do. One of my live streams from the Democratic National Convention in July, just one short clip, when everybody walked out of the Democratic National Convention after they nominated Hillary Clinton, and people were so crestfallen and disgusted and upset, and they went to the Stampeded and they occupied the media tent. They occupied the media tent. A protest occupied the media tent, and it wasn't on TV. I was inside because it just went like that. People shared it, took it, shared it, took it. So you can do these things, and that's why I'm encouraging we do these